What's up, you guys? Welcome back to Beard and Flow Fishing Show. And today we're going to be talking about shaky head fishing. And I discussed this technique a little bit on our first episode, finesse fishing techniques. And today I want to dive a little bit farther down into that rabbit hole. So it first starts off with the jig head. And the jig head that I have here is an owner jig head. It's a ultra head by them. It's an ultra shaky head, and I typically can get these at Academy, or you can order them online as well. They're not too expensive. And so it starts off with your head. You can have one like this, and they also make some that have a small keeper here that is formed out of lead, just like the head, and there's no screw lock like this. I prefer this type of screw lock here because it's got this little pin that's in the middle. It's like a centering pin, and it screws on, your bait screws up onto it, and it ends up looking something like that when you're done with it. And why I like the screw lock is that it keeps that bait on there a little better, in my opinion, especially when fish are trying to come up, eat your bait, and they can pull it down, mangle it. It can slide down your hook if you're not careful. So I like having that reassurance that it's screwed up on there, and it takes a little bit more effort to come off of the hook. But what also is important is the worm. So this worm that was on that, just like what was on that head, is a Zoom shaky head worm. This is the Magnum version of it, so it's a little bit longer, but they also make just a regular shaky head version, which is just a hair shorter. And what makes it special is, as you can see, is it's tapered out tail here. So it kind of starts kind of bulbous here, and it tapers out kind of like a nail, and it gets skinnier and skinnier. And what that does is, when it's rigged up on a head like this, you cast it out there and it'll land on the bottom, and this little tail will be dancing. And and we'll get into more about how to work this bait back to you once you cast it out. But that's kind of like, that is the Zoom Mag shaky head worm, or shaky worm. And then another worm is the Zoom trick worm, and it's got this flat bottom here, and it's got kind of a tapered tail. It's kind of skinny here, tapered tail here. It's got a pointed nose. Now if I rig this on a shaky head, I want to pinch off this point here to kind of make it flat, so that it feeds up to your head a little more evenly there. Just took a little bit off. Not much. It doesn't take much. And what that looks like rigged up on that same screw lock head, it's kind of like that right there. So it kind of meshes up real nicely to that head, on the back end of that head. And then the third worm that I like to use, I know there's three, is the Zoom finesse worm. So it's just like his big brother here, the trick worm, but it's a finesse package. It's much smaller. You can see the size difference there. Now it'll be the same thing. We're just going to pinch off that little bit of head, not much, just the little point there, and we'll thread it up onto a head right there. Now this head is a different head. This is by Buckeye Lures, and it is a spot remover head. And you can get these, I can get these at Walmart. You can get them online as well. I'm sure Academy or anywhere else will sell these as well. Your typical sporting goods store will sell this type of head along with the owner head as well. And so how are we going to fish these? So with the shaky head, we're going to fish it similar to we fish our stick baits. You're going to throw it out there, and you're going to let it fall all the way to the bottom, and you're going to let it have some slack. You're going to let it fall on a semi-slack line, but not too tight because this is a weighted head. So you want it to go straight to the bottom. And you're targeting cover, so you're fishing around docks, the post of the docks, similar to the areas that we talked about in the last video, which was the stick bait video. And we're going to fish it up underneath docks. Is a really good area, especially during the springtime. Or you can fish it in laydowns, like the trees that are overhanging and they're touched into the water. And you can fish them up into those branches and hop them around that, or even rocks. But be careful with that. We'll talk about what kind of line we'll use around rocks. But fished in rocks, around rocky areas, wood, sparse grass, not thick grass, but sparse grass. You can fish it through that. But so most cover you can fish a shaky head in. Now, what makes this different than fishing a Texas rig stick bait is that it's got a weight on the front molded onto this hook. So it seems similar to fishing the stick bait because we're Texas rigging and exposing it when we rig this up. So, but it has this weight here, this weight attached to the head. And so it's causing it to go straight down, and it's going to sit like that, tail up on the bottom. Now, not all plastics float. Some do. Some companies, like Z-Man, they have a floating Elastec material, and this whole worm will float with the exception of what's weighted down with this head here. Now, if you do use Elastec, I don't have an example here, but if you do use Elastec, you don't want to use a screw lock head. The reason is that it will back itself off of that head. I've been down that road. You don't want to go down that road. You want to use one of those other versions that I was talking about where you have to thread the bait onto it over that molded on keeper that's typically right behind this head. But with with what I have here, the Zoom, you don't have to worry about it backing off. It's going to hold tight to this until it finally rips after several fish. Now, when you're fishing around cover, you can also fish this in open water. You can fish in open water too. So like I said, most covers, open water being like if you are looking at a graph or even from the bank and you cast it out there and you notice it falls and it feels like you're pulling it up a hill, there's probably some kind of ledge there or some kind of shelf, something there that's a natural curvature of the bottom of the pond, lake, river system, stream, whatever you're fishing. And in that open area, that open water, you can get by with lighter lines such as 8-pound test, max 10 out in the open. If you're throwing this on a bait caster, you can get by with 12-pound test line. Now, if you're around cover, you can still use 8-pound test. I would recommend 8-pound monofilament or 8-pound fluorocarbon that's not too thin in diameter. So check your packaging. Every single package of line will tell you the diameter of the line. And when you're on the fishing aisle, there will be a plethora of different types of line companies and brands, and one line company's line diameter is going to be different than the other at times. One's going to be thinner, one's thicker. If you're fishing around real abrasive cover like rocks and trees, go for a slightly thicker line diameter. So that might be, so if you use an 8-pound test, you can bump it up to 10. But if you're using spinning rods, use 8 or 10. You can get by with 12, but I wouldn't have straight 12 on my spinning rod and reel. I would probably opt for 10 or 8. Now, we talked about braid to leader in our stick bait video, our last video. So we can use a 10, 15, or 20-pound test main line of braid connected to that 8, 10, or 12-pound mono or fluorocarbon leader. So again, that advantage there. Why would you do that? Yes, you're going to spend more on your braid. That's going to be the main line on your reel, but that braid doesn't go bad as quick. And you have the luxury of you can buy 3 different spools of the 8-pound test, the 10-pound test, the 12-pound test. And if you find that you're going to be into thicker cover and you'd been fishing open water, well, then you can cut that leader off and tie on a different size pound test line. And you don't have to bring 3 rods. Or if you have the luxury of having 3 spinning rods, you can have one with 8, 10, and 12. Now, what kind of rod and reel are we throwing this on? I've mentioned a spinning rod. That's typically your easiest to throw is a spinning rod. You're using a 7-foot medium action rod, spinning rod with a 2,500, 2,000, maybe as big as 3,000 size spinning reel. And that's the diameter of the head of the reel. Whenever you're reeling it, that rotor that goes up and down, that's how big around that reel head is. I wouldn't go any larger than a 3,000 size due to just how big that coil is going to come off to feed through those little guides of the spinning rod. Now you can get by throwing these on bait casters as well. And you can throw them on 7-foot medium heavy or medium action casting rods for your reels there, you're going to use something around a 6-gear ratio or a 7-gear ratio. And what does that mean? That means a 6.4 to 1, a 6.6 to 1, a 7 point, whatever it is. What is that? That's how many times that reel's spool spins as you turn the handle. And you don't want to go super fast because you want to have leverage to pull those fish, if you're around cover, to pull them out of cover. So you want to use, for the rod, I would recommend nothing too much longer than a 7-foot. Now, unless you're in open water or a deep open water, then you can opt for a longer rod, maybe a 7.3, 7.6. But if you're throwing head sizes like this is a quarter ounce head. You can get by with a 7-foot just fine. 7-foot spinning or casting medium action or medium heavy casting rod. You want to go for a slightly moderate action rod. So you're going to have a little bit more bend in that rod. So when you get bit and you reel it down and you set the hook, that rod's going to load up a little bit, but it's going to have plenty of backbone in it. And then it's going to play, that moderate action will play the fish back to you because you're using light line. That's why I'm saying to use a medium action spinning rod and nothing much heavier, so that it's not too stiff of a rod. Because too stiff of a rod can break your line. It can cause the fish to gain slack in it because it didn't load up. It's too stiff of a rod and it can't load up, and causing you to miss fish, and it's going to be a tougher day on the water. So there's your basic setups for a shaky head. So we've got our Zoom shaky head worm. There's the Magnum, and they also make the regular size. We've also got the Zoom trick worm, which is the full size, and then its little brother, the Zoom finesse worm. And you don't have to have Zoom. There's plenty of other companies that make them. I'll just suggest Zoom because it's readily available. You can find it at Walmart. You can find it at Academy. Just everyday Joe can go to Walmart, and in the fishing section, they're going to have a pack of Zoom trick worms or finesse worms. Your basic colors: watermelon red, watermelon candy, whatever. That's that lighter green color, or green pumpkin. This here is called red bug. It's springtime here in South Carolina. Red. Everybody said red is what they're seeing red right now, so this is the color to throw. But green pumpkin, watermelon, even June. This is June bug. You can throw June bug or red bug. You don't need many colors, guys. You don't have to break the bank. These come in big packs, 15 count pack for these. The Trick worm comes in a 20 count pack, and the finesse worm also comes in a 20 count pack. And they're like $4, maybe $5, but you get so many worms. And one worm is not going to tear up that easily unless they've got teeth, and you're not fishing for bass at that point. But they're going to last a while. It's fishing on a budget. I tend to fish on a budget, so that's why I'm saying Walmart, using Zoom. They're not too expensive. So I hope that helps, guys. And if you learned anything, drop a comment down below. Let me know what kind of shaky head that you like to throw, what you like to throw it on, any suggestions, what bait do you like to throw? Let me know. I might have missed something. Drop it down below, guys. Ring the bell, subscribe, and we'll see you back again on another episode of Beard and Flow Fishing Show. Thanks, guys.